Hi guys, I'm Tiara Timora. This is my personal YouTube channel, and today I wanna discuss cope. Basically, I was watching this new video by Broy de Chanel, where she was bringing up the Vogue article that questions, is it now embarrassing to have a boyfriend? And this sort of TikTok, social media, online-based, quote-unquote feminist space that basically encourages women to be quote-unquote self-reliant, and where heteropessimism is sort of the latest, most popular trend at the moment. And I find it interesting that there's this idea of sort of, first of all, having a boyfriend as if it was like a pet on your personal brand. Like, I was discussing this in my last video, how basically we are just compelled to self-brand if we wanna sort of enter or stay in the professional managerial class. At this point, this is a very widespread sort of tendency in the labor market, let alone if you are a celebrity. And this discourse, something I want to say is it makes it sound like having a boyfriend is part of someone's brand, first of all. And something else that this sort of space feels like that Broy was getting at is that it seems like there's this sort of nice girl Gestapo in this space. And for me, that looks a lot like, you know, the shitstorms against figures like Ariana Grande, like saying, oh, she's not a girl's girl because she goes for taken men and all of that. And that goes together with this sort of advice section of the internet that, like Broy was saying, sort of ultimately is asking you to have a series of consumption habits, like to basically turn inward and focus excessively, because I think it can be great to, you know, stay healthy and take care of yourself, do sports, all of that is certainly something that I would support. But what she was saying is, you know, ultimately this turn inward into sort of grooming yourself and just this obsession with your like feminine energy and things of the sort is ultimately, as I also say it, a kind of marketing scheme in a way. And what Roy was bringing up is how, well, if an article that encourages women to stay single is written in Vogue, it's probably more about what they should buy and wear than it is about what's the alternative to only being in a relationship and that's it, and then you have no more life beyond that, right? And I think that's an interesting point. And what I liked most that she brought up, I'm obviously gonna link the video below, by the way, for you guys to watch it, but basically what she says is that heteropessimism is a sort of cope. And I love that point, and it made me think about other tendencies that are within this umbrella of heteropessimism, of TikTok feminism, that I think are very much a cope and that have brought me plenty of frustration in my life and in my like friendships. And basically what she says is this cope is solitude masked as independence and self-reliance. And I couldn't agree more with that. It's like, you know, basically something that would indeed be depressing, such as the loneliness epidemic that we are all going through to more or lesser extents. It's just, instead of being seen for what it is, which is very depressing, is seen as proof of independence, of being super autonomous, when actually you're not being agentic at all. You're just turning inward and focusing on your own singular person and understanding your issues and your life through your own psychology, rather than, at the very least, combining that with a sociological understanding of where you're at. And to that end, I want to read from Eva Illouz's The End of Love, which I recently finished and I'm still digesting. I translated a little bit of it and summarized it for you guys. So she writes, "A new structure has emerged for feelings, which travels through, permeates, and interconnects the economic and sexual spheres, as it produces a self that is defined by a series of characteristics: flexibility, tolerance to risk, failure and rejection, and an intrinsic disloyalty. Sexual agents, as economic ones, not only operate under an acute sense of competition, furthermore, they acquire abilities of self-sufficiency and a generalized sense of precarity. Generalized insecurity coexists with competition and lack of trust. As a result, sexual agents develop techniques to defend their self-esteem or their worth, alleviate anxiety, heighten their emotional abilities, and invest in uncertain futures. All of these techniques being provided by the growing self-help, psychology, and spirituality markets." So, I think this describes exactly the point about, this idea that this TikTok feminism is trying to give us, that we are not lonely, not precarious, just, self-reliant. It's basically pull yourself up by your bootstraps feminism, right? And it's it is basically produced by the material conditions and the political scenario we find ourselves into, but it can do nothing but discuss sort of psychology, going into even sort of spiritual realms, kind of just literally throwing away any remnants of enlightenment thought that we might have. And yeah, a lot of that self-help. So if you don't go to therapy, you're gonna have to help yourself. But that's the point. What do you help? Your psychology, your inner self, rather than, realizing if this is your economic situation, there's not that much you're gonna be able to do, right? At the very least, it's insufficient. And so, yeah, I think this sort of feminist sphere fits within exactly this sociological scenario that Illouz is describing. And one person who is in this that I think very much sort of represents that focus on psychology and that sort of cope in relation to relationships is this, like, I've seen her on YouTube. She can be very entertaining, but I disagree with the sort of approach, like political approach in the sense of, focusing on psychology over sociology to such an extent. And also the heteropessimism, because she's basically been, I think, if I remember correctly, I've seen she's been sort of sued by Hailey Bieber for this video on Hailey's relationship to Justin Bieber, in which she basically argues that I'm gonna link to some video that has this on it, but basically she was making an argument that basically implied that a lot of long-term relationships are there because women are tolerant codependents, and basically using Hailey and Justin as an example of this. And I thought that was such, like, when I saw this Broy video, I immediately thought of this other video, because it was such a clear image of, without even knowing these people, you are already saying their relationship sucks, to the point where he's abusive, and even like speculating about sort of substance use, which, even if true, does that mean then this guy cannot be in a relationship? I mean, this goes back to my video that I made about sort of the red flags of it all, and like this obsession with, you know, you just gotta find that sort of green flagged, super politically correct partner. And in this case, it's like, whoa, so if someone has some sort of, allegedly, some sort of issue, then that makes them undateable to you? Like, is this the way truly we're like looking at people? I don't know. I just also think it is a cope, and this is something that I want to get at. I think it's also a cope because I truly wonder, are all these people hating on very famous, well-known couples like Justin and Hailey? Are these people so hated because they maybe represent to people something that they very much wished they could have attained and they didn't, or they've given up on because it caused them like too much suffering? I really wonder, because like I made another video about sort of why I understand the entire sort of public, like general public drama around the Bieber romantic triangle, in the sense that I can see how someone self-made like Selena Gomez could be sort of felt for by a lot of the public who maybe feels like they worked their asses off, and someone got there who was like just better positioned by virtue of like family, money, connections, etc., and just took something from them easily, and they might see that reflected in the dynamic of, you know, Hailey being the one ending up with Justin, who was the one with the better connections. But I also think there's this, you know, people project a lot on Justin in as if he was this maybe fuckboy that they could never truly get. And the fact that someone sort of quote unquote made it to like end up with them and like get them to marry them, and apparently, you know, staying faithful and, you know, just working it out despite all of the like sometimes very weird actually attacks from like fans. I don't know, I think it definitely can feel like a cope to be like, oh no, but hang on, those relationships are actually really, really awful. Like, you don't want to be in Hailey's position. Like, it might seem like she got, you know, pretty lucky given the sheer number of people that wanted that guy. But no, it's actually an awful place to be. You don't want to be in that relationship. You don't want to marry that young. You don't want to have a baby like they do. And I find that incredibly sad, because why are we obsessing so profoundly over other people's relationships and our own? Like, what is this profound turn inward, not just in our psychology, but in our most intimate relationships? And what I believe to be other examples of this cope, honestly, are, for instance, something I've heard said in, like, supposedly, feminist podcasts, is this idea that your sort of dating situation is under your control, in the sense that, if you always go for the unavailable person, or if you just push away any like good guy, then it must be that you either don't really want a relationship, or that you haven't done enough therapy, or both, right? And I don't know, I think, again, that's putting this under a psychological focus, and basically concluding that that's where the problem lies, not your material conditions, but just, haven't done enough therapy, I guess, or doesn't know what she wants. And also, I see kind of this cope play out in the reactions to, for instance, Taylor Swift dating Matty Healy, like the way people just went at this, to me, was, truly creeps, as Taylor said herself, I think. And also Lana Del Rey's wedding, right? Her recent marriage to this alligator swamp tour guide. I think the way some women in this online feminist space basically just went for this man and just said, oh, don't date blue collar guys because that's dating below you, blah blah blah. Oh my god. First of all, I loved that. I love them together. I love him. I love them. But also for these women, basically what I think is, when you're in this professional managerial class sphere, your compulsion to demonize the working class is so powerful. You can't even stand Lana Del Rey marrying this man. It's so sad, to say the least. And again, I think a cope, because I also think these men, these relationships kind of, for lack of a better word, trigger these people into they must be awful relationships. It can't be that there's anything good about these people or this couple, etc. And here's the thing, I feel like women who have made the decision to heteropessimistically stay out of dating and are just telling themselves that being single actually is better, are comparable to women who have chosen to stay in relationships that, sorry, they don't really want all that much, but because it's the good guy and it's the PC situation to be in and the PC guy to be with, then they choose to stay in those relationships, which feels sort of safe compared to this pretty awful landscape that we have going on. And so for these women who choose the PC relationship, the PC guy, or abstaining altogether, these other women who instead do go for these less PC people and situations, famously Taylor with Maddie, Lana Del Rey with her alligator guide husband. There's a tendency, because the zeitgeist is telling you to, you know, do the former, and so stay in a situation in which your personal life and relationships are PC. When you don't, when you do the latter and you know, do something that is more of a spark for you, but that can be regarded as, you know, less safe, or you know, these men are not given the thumbs up by the professional managerial class, then there's a tendency, just as there is to socially encourage the former, to demonize the latter and the women who embody it, who choose to still go for it despite the pain and despite the risk. And to me, you know, this does show those kind of relationships that are so, PC, safe. It does show that they are also a cope, just as not being in one might be. And here's the thing, you can suffer and, or maybe just deal with going after or dating someone who a lot of people don't like, who, you know, might have issues of their own, who doesn't, honestly, who might be harder to get because everyone wants them, which, by the way, we shouldn't underestimate how hated women might be for going for that type of guy, by people who, again, have either dropped out of the entire dating thing or have chosen to date the safe guy, even though deep down that's still kind of the guy they want. Can we acknowledge that? Or they would want if they thought they could get him. And basically, like, you can do that. You can, you know, deal with that pain, or you can do the cope. And to me, the cope can be, yes, the heteropessimism of totally abstaining and telling yourself that being single is just better, is just the new cool thing. Or you can stay in those PC relationships that you may or may not really want, and that frankly make you just look so like you don't want to be there sometimes. Sorry, but you know, it's I find it interesting how people, when they are in these situations and they talk about it, it's like, why have I seen other people more excited about spending one evening by someone's side than you are to, like, live with different, like, I don't know, it's just looks pretty sad. And simultaneously demonized to no end, and, you know, feel holier than the women who go for the former option, right? I don't know, I think it is also a cope, again, because it's the, you know, when you look at the criticism, it's always from this second group who think they are, you know, they're so enlightened, to the former group. And to me, that is a cope. To me, that is a cope. And it's a little tiring for it to not be socially acceptable for you to be the one to tell them, you know, your relationship might be as politically correct as possible, and I'm sure this guy really loves you. Do you love him though? Because that to me is a very interesting question, and it seems like it's the last one we're ever allowed to ask. And actually, it's not very feminist at all, is it? To, you know, just be like, ultimately, just get what you can, right? Go for the one who's treating you right. Because that's all you're gonna get. Do you see what I'm getting at? Like, I don't know, I think it's very twisted and very unpopular to point out. And I think ultimately what this goes back to is the problem in politics that we have, which is turning inward, just looking at our psychology, looking at our psyche, or these guys' psyche, you know, again, he's a narcissist discourse, right? As if Justin Bieber hasn't been called that a million times, for example. And, you know, while we're doing that, we forget to look at the sociological context this is happening in. And so yet again, we blame ourselves or we blame other individuals, and we forget to look at the material conditions and the, you know, cultural zeitgeist this is happening under. And I want to read a Christopher Lasch quote. He described, since the society has no future, it makes sense to live only for the present moment, to fix our eyes and on our own private performance, to become connoisseurs of our own decadence. And I think that is exactly right. And I also think these relationships that are so PC are very beloved, especially by the PMC, because they embody this art of the healthy relationship, this art of, you know, feminist sex. And they are very much managed. They do use this psychology industry that is growing and is built around especially this sort of the art of the healthy relationship kind of shit. And they sell you, on top of many things, the idea that you are, you know, doing politics through these relationships. And I find that, first of all, a cope and sad, and second of all, just very bad politics. If not, you know, just this form of hyper politics, not really history coming back. And yeah, I think it's a part of the end of history scenario we sadly find ourselves in. Anyway, these were my thoughts today about this whole TikTok feminism discourse. I'd love to know what you guys think. Please leave it in the comments, subscribe to support me, and I will also, like I said, link all of the material I've cited and discussed here below. See you guys very soon.